Hello? Hello? Does everybody hear me back there? No? There we go. There we go. Okay. We want to welcome you if you're visiting here with us. And this is an awesome congregation, and we want you to be a part of it. And so if you're from Lebanon, we talk with us, and we want to help you in any way that we can to get all of God's blessings. We also want to thank the Highland Heights Church here because 15 of us went in the month of June on a mission trip to Belo Horizonte, and without your financial support and your prayerful support, we wouldn't be able to have done that. The text that was read this evening talked about the end of Paul's first missionary journey, where he and Barnabas went out and preached the gospel and established churches. But in the end, they come back to Antioch and share with the Christians there about all the good things that God had done through them. And that's what we want to do tonight. There are 5 of us who will just talk briefly about our trip to Belo Horizonte, our mission trip there. And we started meeting. Here's the 2017 Highland Heights Brazil mission team. And we started, our first meeting was January 29th. So we met for about 4 months, periodically off and on. And we talked about some of the health concerns and how to deal with those. And we also talked about some cultural preparation, that you don't drink coffee in Brazil during a meal, but only after a meal, and they're little tiny cups. So it's real strong, and that was hard on Corey, but he made it. He likes a big coffee cup. And we were especially blessed to have Lee Allen with us for several meetings to help us get set up with World English Institute materials, and Lee happens to be here this evening, and we're so thankful for that, and his wife. And I want you to get to know him and talk with him, but he was such a blessing for us, and still is being, because we're still new at this. But basically, Charlie's going to talk more about this here in a few minutes, so I won't talk a lot, but about how we would offer English classes, but we're using the Bible, and so people want to learn English in Brazil, and so it's just a great tool, and I'll let Charlie talk about that here in a few minutes. We had these business cards printed up that we would pass out as we were going around, meet people that would speak English and share those with them, and so there'll be more people, I'm sure, over time will be signing up. We also had this business card, which was a picture of the downtown church building there with the church out front, and in the heart of Belo Horizonte. And there you can see where the Central Church of Christ building is, that little arrow is pointing. And then the hotel we stayed was about 2 blocks away, and so it was real convenient for people to come and go for classes. Belo Horizonte, the greater area, is over 5 million people, so it's a lot of work to be done there. The first church that Becky and I started there in 1980 is the Contagem Church of Christ, actually a little city right outside of Belo Horizonte, but they've grown, and beautiful building there. But we were there, Becky and I went a week before the team went to get things set up, but also helped celebrate the 50th wedding anniversary of this couple here. And they were one of our first converts there at that congregation, and his Ademans was a bus driver, but had an accident there. A truck driver hit them head on, and people were killed on the bus, and he was left blind without part of his leg and paralyzed. But his wife stayed beside him all these years, and they raised 5 children, and now they have 9 grandchildren, and their family's grown. But the children all became Christians. Just a wonderful family, great hub of that work there in the church. And also, I was preaching and teaching there that first week as well. This is a video, but obviously it's not working. So, but you've seen me preach and teach before. So, and home Bible study groups are an important part of the work there in Belo Horizonte. So we participated in some of those. Also, I taught had a marriage encounter with 24 couples from the El Dorado Church, is another congregation that we helped begin there through the work of the downtown church. Great couples. And then we spent time with Alex and Anna Giroto, who are a Brazilian couple that we support there in the Highland Heights Church supports. And you can see some of the cultural differences. There you eat pizza with a knife and fork. I know they were laughing at Donald Trump because he ate pizza with a knife and a fork. I saw that on the news, but all Brazilians do. And you don't have much tomato sauce on this pizza. You have dried tomatoes and rucola, and use that bottle in the middle is olive oil. You pour olive oil on your pizza. So it's just different. But then on the 10th of June, the mission team arrived, And then Corey did our preaching at the downtown church on Sunday morning, and whoops, went past too fast here. And at the National Congregation, another church that we helped begin there, and Sunday evening. And they appreciate this so much. And then Corey taught an intensive study on the book of Exodus. Hopefully he'll tell more about that with church leaders from different congregations, our leadership training school there. Corey taught so much that he had to go through 3 interpreters to keep up with him. So, and then while some were teaching English classes, the Bible in English, and others were, like with Corey, with the intensive study, others of us went out to the city of Ribeirão das Neves and worked with the Liberty congregation there. And we use this track here that we have translated into Portuguese by Alan Webster, o que esperar quando você visitar uma igreja de Cristo, means what you should expect when you visit a Church of Christ. And we had stickers printed up, and then that night I preached this little congregation there. It's a great church, very enthusiastic. And then we also worked some at the children's home, spent some time there at the Belo Horizonte Children's Home. There's 45 children there housed in 3 houses, and they're presently building the 4th house with donations of members here at this congregation and from Brazil there. And so they're already, they hadn't done these walls yet. They're halfway up about the walls right now, so hopefully they'll be able to finish. It takes about a year in Brazil to build a house. It sounds like a long time, but that's normal, but only if we can get donations there. So we thank you so much for blessing us and giving us the opportunity to go and help with the kingdom there in Belo Horizonte, Brazil.
Tonight I want to just share with you some information about the curriculum that we used while we were in Brazil. And but first I think it'd be appropriate for us to say that we want to give God the credit and for allowing our team to have a safe trip there and return home. And we just hope that the glory will be to Him, and the seed that we planted there, that will grow. And so just pray for that, if you would, for us. I'd also want to thank FH and Becky for the preparation and the planning that they did. This started weeks in advance before we ever traveled to Brazil. And I tell you, we hit the ground running. We didn't stop. It was a pretty rigorous schedule. There were some nights that we were getting in after my bedtime, I know, so we had some pretty long days. Just coordinating the transportation, I know, had to be an effort, because making sure you get everybody where they need to be for their appropriate schedules. So thanks to them. Also thanks to Alex and Anna, because they actually coordinated and set up the meetings with the people there in Belo that we were to teach, and so we appreciate their help in that. Our mission was to teach English using the Bible, and the course that we used was published by the World English Institute, and the book was entitled The Conflict Between Good and Evil. This book basically started out with the beginning of creation. It had 7 different subtitles. It was written fairly simple, you might say, for the benefit of those that might be able to read English or barely read English, so that they could understand it better. The book had 7 lessons, basically. The first one was God creates the universe, and the next one was what is man, the first sin, Cain and Abel, Noah and the flood, the call of Abraham, and also God gives Abraham a son. Each one of these lessons in the book gave scripture reference at the end. So the students that we had were required to read that particular section or that lesson in English. Some of them that we had could not, but we had at least 2 people in most of the sessions, and one of them could read, so the others could basically understand what was going on. But at the end of each session that they read in the curriculum, there was question and answer session that the students could fill out. They were true or false, and then they had comments at the end that they could make on what they learned after they read that particular section and make comments on it. We actually looked at the answers that they gave, and if they were incorrect, we let them know that. We also gave them references where they could find why it was incorrect. The students basically signed up weeks before we arrived there, and that's, like I say, it was from the efforts of Alex and Anna. Each student, after we did the lessons that we had time for, I know Gail and I didn't get through all the way through the book, through the 7 lessons, but at the end, they were given a card like FH showed earlier. It had the email address of WEI and also specific contact information for each one of the teachers that they could log into after we left, and they could continue their study if they so chose to do, and hopefully they will do that. I just want to say, overall it was a blessing for me just to sit down with these students. Most of them were young men. To witness their desire to learn about God and His creation and how much He loved them. The members at the Centro Church, their expression of passion for God's Word, it's just unbelievable. I was really taken away by their passion and their desire to serve, and it just showed true the whole time we were there. I think I can speak for the whole team by saying that this was one mission trip that we'll never forget, and it was great experience.
So this evening, my portion of this presentation is just about the interactions we had with the English schools that we went and talked at, and just other groups that we had the opportunity to spend time with and meet. And for me personally, this was my favorite part of the trip because it just gave us the opportunity to meet so many great people, and it was a very good gateway to introduce people to our WEI classes, which was the reason we were down there. And I know I think we went to 3 different English schools, I believe, and out of all those 3, we had several people set up personal study session with us and sign up for our WEI classes alone. So that was an amazing experience because that's what we went down there to do, is spread God's word. So the day we arrived in Brazil, before we even got to go settle in our hotel, like my grandpa said, we hit the ground running. We landed, we ate, we went to an English school. We never stopped. So we went to our first English school. It was in Belo Horizonte, I think it was. Okay, sorry. But anyways, there was 2 classes going on at the time, so we just split up. Half of us went to one class, half of us went to the other, and we just stood in front of the class and we talked to the students. They asked us questions. They were very interested to know what we like to do and where we were from. And I know one person out of those 2 classes came and worshiped with us on Sunday, which was awesome. And I know personally I got to talk to one of the students in the class I was in, and he was studying to be an engineer like I am, so that gave us something to talk about. So we talked for a long time, we exchanged emails, and we talk every now and then, so that was a good way to start our trip. And I think this picture in the middle is from that English school, and you can see the There's 2 students right there in the middle. Yeah, right there. So another great interaction we had was on Wednesday. I think 9 of us went to, I forgot to say it. Lagoa Santa, is that right? Okay. I could never say it, but we went to Lagoa Santa, and we met several students there from a different English school, and so they were going on like a field trip, I guess is what you would say. So we went to this big park area. It was a very beautiful place, so we got to go on a hike with them. We got to go see a cave, which was awesome, and just the whole time we were there, we just talked to the students and made connections with them, and I know at least everybody from our team that was there made a connection with at least one person, which was a great thing. And just from those connections, we also introduced more people to the WEI classes. And I know there was one student there that me and Tyler talked to a lot. His name was Gustavo. He was really shy, but he was a good guy, and we talked to him a lot, and we got to know each other really well. And we exchanged emails, and I think that night he actually contacted Alex to set up a study session with me and Tyler on Friday, and Derek. So that Friday, Gustavo, he took a train and a bus ride to get to the Central Church from his house, and it was an hour ride. So we took an hour from his house to the church, and then went an hour back after. So me, Derek, and Tyler had a I think it was like an hour study session with him. It went really good. And then Derek exchanged his online class information with him. And he's actually an artist, so he drew me and Tyler a painting as a gift. It was a baseball bat with a baseball, because we had told him the day before that we like to play baseball. But anyways, that was an amazing experience for me, because I could tell that we had touched his heart and hopefully affected his life for the better. And I don't know about Tyler, but I still email him every day, talk to him, ask him how he's doing. Tyler, do you? Okay, yeah, he does. But these pictures, the bottom left and the top right, is from when we went to Lagoa Santa. These were on the hike. That's Tyler, that's not me, if you couldn't tell. So yeah. And this top left picture is from when we went to the children's home on Thursday. There's a house across the street. I guess FH just knows the guy. He's an amazing guy. He's a painter. None of us knew his name. We just called him the painter, because he just makes the most amazing paintings. But so we went over there and we talked to him and his wife for the longest time. They made us some cake. I drank coffee for the first time. And I think this bottom right picture was at the Central Church. There's Morgan, and then 2 girls that was with us a lot, especially the one on the left. Her name was Sarah. She was with us almost every day, so we all got to know her very well. But just the interactions we made with all the different English classes was just a very special part of our trip, because it was just a great way to reach the younger population there in that area. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Evening, church. I'm going to talk briefly about the children's home. I know FH had kind of mentioned a little bit specifically about the children's home. They got about an acre of property that was purchased, and they have 3 houses where the children are housed right now. And then, as he said, the 4th one's being built right now. But it's truly impressive when you go there, just to see the conditions that the children are living in. And if you look at the back of the shirts that we had made, we've got James 1:27, which is really the foundational verse for the mission trip that we had. I just want to read that really quickly. It states that religion that is pure and undefiled before God the Father is this: to visit orphans and widows in their affliction, and to keep oneself unstained from the world. Another good verse that I looked up as well is actually Psalm 68:5, and it states that the Father is of the fatherless, and He's the protector of widows, is God in His holy habitation. I think that all of us that went on the trip are using the words of the Bible I think that the words of the Bible call God's people to actively pursue meeting the needs of children living as orphans, and a great place to start is through prayer. So even if you didn't go on the mission trip, if you support it through prayer, through finances, just thoughts for each of us, we are certainly appreciative. But going back to the specifics of the children's home, it's like we call it the Four Seasons of children's homes. It is one of the nicest places you can imagine, going to a country like Brazil and actually seeing the conditions that the children are living in. And the neat part about it too that FH and Becky have told us is that this children's home is the model for the state of Minas Gerais. The governor, many leaders have actually come to see the children's home, how it's operated, how it's run. Each house houses 15 children, but they also have a psychologist and a social worker as well, in addition to the ladies that come in and cook for the children and care for them. So they're extremely well taken care of, and it's certainly a blessing for those that are there. Here's some great photos of the kids, and from the moment we came in the gate, the children just flocked to us. As you can see, in the pictures, just the pure joy that the children have. They don't really know the affliction that they have. They don't know, that they're orphans. I think as good as of the situation that they have, and how well they're taken care of, it's certainly a blessing to us, and we had great interaction with the children, and we wish we could have stayed longer. I think it's one of those places you could go and just spend a week and not get tired seeing the smiles on the kids' faces and just touching their lives. Now, I will say that Charlie's right, Austin. I mean, it was an exhausting trip from the 8.5-hour flight. Well, actually, we left Miami a couple hours late, so we left about 1:30 in the morning. Leaving out of Miami, we're supposed to leave about 10:30, so we had a nice stretch there. But we hit the ground running, sun up to sundown. The trip's really exhausting, as you can tell with these photos. You got to get your sleep when you can get it, right, FH? Right? But we were certainly blessed to have Alex and Anna and FH and Becky to kind of get everything set up. So we just had to poke a little fun at FH because he wore himself ragged pretty good, hauling us Americans around. Amanda and I were very fortunate and blessed to have Morgan on this trip with us. When we went 3 years ago, it really opened our eyes not only to the mission field, but also to just the foundation that was laid before us by FH and Becky and the congregations that they started there, and really just the hospitality of the Brazilians. They are just wonderful people. They will do anything to try to help you, but this time we were able to take Morgan with us, and I think that the neat part about that was just the innocence of her and not knowing what to expect. And so I interviewed her a little bit and kind of asked her, her thoughts and surprises, specifically about the children's home. And a couple of the things that she mentioned that I think made impressions upon her were not only how great the conditions were for the children, but also how she, living in America, and seeing how the children live there, and even just the people that we interacted with, how she can be more content, and how she can be, how thankful she is to how blessed she is by not only being born and living in this country, but compared to how the kids were there. The interesting thing too that Amanda and I wanted to impress upon Morgan is to also have more of a servant's heart, which is one reason we wanted her to go on the trip with us. And so one of the things that she was able to do at Friendship Christian was she wrote a letter to her class and set a jar, and it said Coins for Kids on the jar for about a month or so prior to the trip. And she encouraged her classmates to bring any loose change that they could find in the seats of the cars or in their couches or anything like that, and what the mission would be for her to go to Brazil so that she could actually financially support the children's home. So she raised about $50 or so just in coins that's going to be sent to the children's home to kind of help further the building of the fourth house. And then, if you know Morgan loves stuffed animals. I mean, loves stuffed animals. From a child, even now, like she loves stuffed animals. So one thing we did was encourage her as a sacrifice would be to go through her stuffed animal collection of, I don't want to tell you how many stuffed animals she has, but to take a certain percentage of those stuffed animals and to give back and to bring those to Brazil to the children that are less fortunate as she is. So she went through her collection, and with the help of her grandparents, actually got about 50 stuffed animals. Majority of them were Beanie Baby type, and we were actually able to pack them in our suitcase and deliver them down there to the children so that they will have just a small memento of not only her visit, but also just to let the children know that they're loved. Really, just like I said before, Amanda, Morgan, and I really want to thank the congregation here for not only your thoughts, prayers, and support, but it's really our hope that this mission trip for Morgan and really for all of us that went will serve as a foundational jump-off point for us to not only be servants here in Lebanon, here in Wilson County, but also to continue to support missionaries across the world. And I would also encourage you, if you want to learn more about the World English Institute, yes, that was our foundational documents that we used to teach English there. But if you have access to the internet and you're somewhat internet savvy, which most of us are with our cell phones and our computers, reach out to one of us, talk to FH. We can get you signed up, and you can actually be a local missionary, the world abroad, and pull students from anywhere in the world that want to learn English from all different religions, and you have an opportunity to be in the comfort of your own home and serve as a missionary abroad. And I would highly encourage each of you to reach out and do that if that's something that you're willing to do. Thanks.
This was a very special trip to take. I was blessed in 2015 to be able to accompany FH and Becky on my first trip to Brazil. And when I was there, I was asked to teach a leadership. We dubbed it a leadership training course. We basically took the Roman study that I like to do in our home, and we tried to get through about as much of that as we could in about 3 or 4 days, and we got about through half of it. This year, they asked for me to come down and again do kind of a leadership training, but they asked for us to do an intensive study, preferably of an Old Testament book. And so the decision was made to go through the book of Exodus. This proved to be this was a really neat study, and when we say intensive, I think it did rack our brains pretty well. I don't know how much of, it's me saying that it had to be 3 translators. It did have to be 3 translators. I didn't think I wore them out that bad, but it was, the seminar was over 3 days. Grand total of about 10 hours. We went 3 hours for the first 2 days and 4 hours on the last day. In that time period, first night we did we did an overview of the book of Exodus. Kind of worked our way through, made sure we were all on the same page. I wasn't really sure what all the knowledge background of everyone was. So we made sure that we plugged Exodus into its historical context. Where does the book fit within the context and the whole scheme of the Bible? We discussed the fact that Exodus really, truly is an important book. You cannot overlook it, especially for the fact that people today, even those in communities who believe in God, are doubting the historical fact, the historicity of the Exodus. And the problem is that if the Exodus doesn't happen, then our faith is a fraud. Because Judaism rests upon the fact that the Exodus happened. And because Christianity has its roots within Judaism, if Judaism is false, then guess what? So it's Christianity. So we discussed that on the first night, worked our way through. I don't think we've ever been through the book of Exodus as fast as we were that night. Second night, we took time to discuss, we dubbed difficult questions that come out of the book of Exodus. This took us through the second night and the first part of the last day. Particularly, we looked at 3 questions. We tried to sort our way through what does it mean, or who actually hardened Pharaoh's heart. It's one of those questions that really bothers a lot of people. Questions about God's sovereignty versus literalness. Is it a figure of speech? What is it? So we talked about who hardened Pharaoh's heart. We spent time talking about how many Israelites actually came out of the land of Egypt. There is actually debate legitimate debate as to whether or not it was the 2+ million, if that's been translated correctly, or maybe the number was a lot smaller, but it all depends upon how you translate the various Hebrew terms. So we spent some time talking about that. And then we spent a little bit of time discussing, as our third difficult question, what is our relationship to the Jewish Sabbath day? Does God expect Christians to keep the Sabbath? That has become a very important question to a lot of the Brazilian people. Maybe not as much in our region of the world now. I'm not saying it's not important, but we don't tend to think about that one or worry about that one as much. But there's a lot of influence of Adventist-type denominations down in Brazil. And so this question was one that they had a special interest in. So those were and then the last day, we simply just did some practical preaching points. We went through various texts and tried to gather some worthwhile lessons. We spoke specifically to a lot of the leaders. There were deacons and ministers and elders who were present. And we talked about various lessons that you gleaned, such as from Jethro's advice to Moses, that, your job is not necessarily to do it, but to make sure it gets done. And delegation is one of the most important things to ministries working properly. And so we spoke to the deacons and ministry leaders upon that, and then we also gave the encouragement to the Christians that were there. When they come to you to ask for help, don't run away. Be there to help them, because they can't delegate if the church is not willing to support them in the work. It was really a special week. I know that this is Alex right here. He's a pretty big fella. All right, I mean, he toe-to-toe with Robin, all right? So Alex is a pretty big fella right here. His dad, Helgier, took a lot of these photos. This is actually Helgier's photo. This is one of Helgier's photos. And he put this together as well. Every night he would come back to me and he said, okay, I went last night, took pictures, and put them on Facebook. Great, brother. But he put together these things for us, and just some special compilations of things that we had talked about on the nights before. They did record these, right? So if you're halfway interested in watching, I'm like FH. You've seen me preach in live, so you don't necessarily have to watch this. But they did put these on YouTube. If you're interested in seeing portions of that, it's going to take you a while because it's said twice. It's said in English and then it's said in Portuguese that follows along behind it. But we really did. I hope you have gotten a sense from these guys, and thank you, gentlemen, very much for stepping up and being a part of this. The experience is always different through everyone's eyes, and there are things that each person takes home, and there was the seriousness and of the trip. We knew that we were down there to sow seed for God. And if we weren't sowing seed, we were tilling the soil in order for others to be able to sow seed later on. And God blessed us very much. In fact, I think you used that phrasing, that this very much was a tilling of the soil many times. And God blessed us not just with good opportunity, open doors, but He blessed us with opportunity to laugh together, to enjoy each other's company. We spent a little bit of time every morning on one of the top floors of the hotel. We could look out and just see for miles, and we could spend a little bit of time, sing a song or two, have a little devotional time together. We laughed about finding seat belts in places on airplanes that weren't seat belts, and we laughed about certain really big guys trying to squeeze into small taxis in there. And, I just don't have enough time to show you all the pictures. But if you imagine trying to take an egg and stick it down a bathroom sink drain, you'll know what a couple of people felt like trying to climb into taxis. There was one night, they put 8 people, this cab driver squeezed 8 people into a 5-person taxi. I don't think too many people were laughing about that one, but until after the fact, and then we were. But opportunities are going to come for you to be a part of these. We had 15 of us that were privileged to be able to go down. And as was mentioned, you as a congregation helped to make that happen. We used one of our fifth Sundays to contribution to be able to help with the cost of this. Others of you donated privately to individual people who were going on the trip, and so maybe if you're not able to go on these trips, that's a way that you can help. It's already been mentioned. Obviously, we know that you had us in your prayers. We were grateful for that. And I hope that as opportunities like this arise, I hope you will take advantage of the opportunity to go. It may not be Brazil. It may be trips kind of like Honduras like we took last year. There are times we've had Panama trips that are medical mission trips. Find an opportunity. You may say, well, I can't do that. That's just not in me to go. You don't know that until you go. When you get into one of these foreign countries, you are amazed. I promise you, you'll be amazed at the strength that you will find in God's Spirit to help you get through things that you never thought you'd get through. And you are amazed at the strength and the camaraderie that you will find and develop with the people that you are with. I think each of us that were on that trip, I think we are this much closer to each other than we were before. We were friends, but now we've been soldiers together. And that forms a special bond. And church, we need to be doing that. Whether it is abroad, Jesus said, go into all the world. All the world means all the world. It may be halfway around the world. It may be on another continent somewhere. Or it may be here. You may have opportunities here where doors are opening. The question is, are you walking through them? Are you taking the opportunities to share with people what God has done for us? I hope you are. And if you're not, I hope you can find that desire and that fire deep down within you. If you don't know how to share the gospel, find somebody that does and learn from them, because it is something that each of us can learn how to do. Yes, it'll be rough around the edges for a while, but the more you do it, the more opportunity God's going to provide you to share those words of wisdom and to share that love. And the more you share that love, the more people are going to respond positively to God's message of grace and mercy and love. And tonight, as we wrap this up, we would be remiss if we didn't extend that opportunity to respond to that message here as well. If you are not a Christian and you need to become one, you know what you need to do. You know that you need to respond in faith to the gospel call and confess your sins, repent of those sins, confess your belief in Jesus as the Son of God and that He is Lord of your life, and put Him on in the waters of baptism to rise as a new creature, to walk in newness of life. We want to help you with that tonight if we can. If you don't know what we mean when we say obey the gospel, let us share that with you. We want to be able to explain that. And if you are hurting, frustrated with things in life, if sin is getting its nasty claws back into your life and you need prayers for strength and courage and forgiveness and comfort, we want to pray with you and for you. That's why we're here. That's why we are family. And so if we can help you in any way at all, let us know right now as we sing the song, as we stand and sing.